Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to the course of organic farming. In this lecture, we will deal is the role of legumes in organic farming. In our previous lecture, we have learned about the definition, concept and principles of organic farming, what is the growth in Indian section as well as the global trend in organic agriculture, what are the different type of scope and what is the constants for doing organic, what are the different type of organic manures are available and source of other organic nutrient management practices. In this lecture, we will deal what is the role of legumes. Legumes play a very important role for crop productivity, maintaining soil health and especially in organic farming. When we know in case of inorganic farming, we can use different type of fertilizer. For nitrogen mainly we are using two fertilizer, one is the urea which contain 46% nitrogen and similarly we can also use DAP which contain 18% nitrogen and 46% P2O5. But in our organic farming we cannot apply any of this inorganic fertilizer. So, we have to always rely on the different types of organic manure, compost, vermicompost, etc. Apart from these all types of manure, legume play a very important role because this legume has the capacity to fix atmospheric nitrogen in their root nodules and that nitrogen which is been fixed is not only is giving to the crop growing in succession after that crop, but also to their associated intercropping. So, legume always should be tried to promote in case of our organic farming either as a mixed cropping, intercropping or growing in the cropping sequence. The Leguminosae or the family is Fabaceae is the third largest family of flowering plants consisting of over 20,000 species. The legumes are a nutritious staple of diets around the world and they are also very easy source or cheap source of protein, vitamin, different type of complex carbohydrate and fiber. And if we see what is the difference, we have a thing legume versus pulse. So, if you see legumes and what is the pulse, all the pulse are legumes, but all the legumes are not considered as a pulse. Only those legumes whose seeds we used for consumption as a dal purpose, we called it is a pulse. So, but legume refers to the all the plants which come under the family Fabaceae. So, pulse, what is the different type of pulse? We may be use chickpea, we may be use pigeon pea, that is adahar, we are using lentil, we are using pea, and different other types of maybe mung bean, maybe we are using the black gram and other things, different type of rice bean and others. So, these are all are pulse and they are also coming to the Leguminosae, but there are certain crops which are legumes, but we are not considered as a pulse. Suppose soybean crop, he is a legume, they can fix nitrogen, but that soybean seeds we are not using as a pulse for dal. Similarly, different types of lots of tree species is there and lots of species which are staying in the jungles, which they are part of the Leguminosae family and they also fix nitrogen in their soil, but they are not considered as a pulse. And if we see the major cropping system of India, there are different cropping system in India. Rice wheat cropping system is the majority area. If we see, it is 9.85 million hectare, followed by the rice which is 5.89 million hectare, cotton wheat 1.9 million hectare. If you see, most of our majority cropping system is covered by the cereal cropping system, either rice or rice wheat. So, both these crop rice and wheat are very high yielding crop. If you see in case of our Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, we are getting 5 to 6 ton of rice, after that also we are getting more than 5 to 6 ton of wheat. So, when you are producing more than 12 ton of grain from a particular area of land in every year, it also takes too much nutrients from the soil. So, when you are giving too much nutrients from the soil sometimes become nutrient deficit. Every time we are applying only some fertilizer, but micronutrients also becoming deficient. So, in this cropping system always we have to promote to grow different type of pulses, because when cereals are mostly taken their nutrients in the surface soil layer, but the pulse, these crops or legumes crops, they have deep root system. So, they take the nutrient from the deeper soil layer, and when they, after their death, after they are decaying, these crop residues again going back to the soil. So, the deeper soil layer which is the nutrient present that come into the surface soil layer. So, whenever we have done some crop rotation including legume after rice or wheat, our cropping system, it becomes a sustainable, soil is become healthier. There are non-sustainable different types of use of cereal based cropping system. Among them, report sustainability under threat, overmining of the soil nutrients is there, and emergence of multiple nutrient deficiencies, decline factor productivity, declining the growth water table, and formation of a hard pan. Besides that, different type of weed. Suppose there is a weed called Phalaris minor. This Phalaris minor is wheat, and whenever we are growing particularly wheat in the same area, these weeds become very much dominant, and there is a very tough. We cannot control the weed nowadays. There are a lots of question of herbicide resistance, but whenever we go for organic farming, we cannot go for herbicide application. So, we have to organically treat the weeds, and our choice is very much limited. So, in this condition, we have to always think how to different type of cereal based cropping system, whatever the demerits we are facing, we can change some of the issues by inclusion of legume in the cropping systems. So, in this slide, we will discuss what is the importance of legumes, in which aspect legume help for a sustainable agriculture. So, we know in all these legumes roots, they made some nodules, and within the nodules there is some bacteria which can convert nitrogen into usable forms. So, this nitrogen is present in the atmosphere, and there is a very good amount of nitrogen is present in the atmosphere, but all the plant cannot use this. There is certain plant with the help of this rhizobium bacteria, particularly the pulses or legumes, they can fix the nitrogen in the soil. These are also essential for regeneration of nutrient deficient soil. So, in the nutrient deficiency soil, when you grow legumes, they not only fix the atmospheric nitrogen, but also they take the nutrients from the deeper soil layer, and after their decomposition they again giving back to the in the surface layer. So, in the surface layer the nutrient deficiency will be removed. Similarly, it is replacing low cost of method of nitrogen of the soil. A nitrogen is very much costly, and our government is always giving a huge subsidy. If the subsidy has been taken off, our urea fertilizer will be costly more than 2 or 3 times. So, in that condition it will be tough for a farmer to apply urea and other fertilizer, especially the nitrogen. But legumes are very cheap source, they are giving the fertilizer to the soil, and they are also giving some extra yield for the crop. And also they are providing needed proteins, minerals and vitamins to humans and livestock, and it is a means of improving the livelihood smallholder farmers around the world, where they cannot afford the use of very high quantity of inorganic fertilizer, they cannot purchase from the market. They are mainly basically depends on the legumes for their agricultural development. So, what is the legume source of? Legume also source of different type of protein. A legume contain more than 20 to 25% protein. Every poor farmer cannot afford for his health to purchase of probably high value like chicken, mutton or fish. Besides this, the population which are mainly the vegetarian nature, so they will not use or consume this type of non-veg items. So, pulse or these legumes are there a very important source for their protein. So, this protein has a very tremendous role in their health. Also they are giving phosphorus and different type of polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fatty acids. They are also, when we use balanced food diet over the times using the pulses, they are also reported to decrease the value of the cardiovascular disease, some type of cancer, digestive health, diabetes and obesity. So, these legumes have a very pressure role in the cropping sequence. Cropping sequence mean when we are growing 2 crops or 3 crops one after year. Previously I grow rice, after that we are growing supposedly wheat, that is a rice wheat cropping sequence. Similarly, I grow rice, after that I am growing pea, that is a rice pea cropping sequence. So, we have to always promote the grow of this type of legumes crops, especially in the organic farming, where your choice of fertilizer use is very much limited and there is a need to give the soil nutrient, especially nitrogen, you have to rely on the legumes. So, legumes can also, there is some indirect role. If we see the emission of nitrogen oxide. Suppose when we are applying nitrogen fertilizer, the nitrous oxide N2O is emitted from the soil. This N2O has a very high global warming potential. It is global warming potential is more than several hundreds. So, in this condition, if the nitrogen fertilizer is used, the greenhouse gas emission in terms of carbon dioxide is high. But in case of nitrogen fertilizer, if we want to give same time of nitrogen with the help of legume incorporation, our greenhouse gas emission is limited. So, this is very much important role for mitigating the climate change, and you have also role in the sequestration carbon in the soil and reduce the overall fossil energy input in the system, because whenever we are producing the urea or any type of nitrogenous fertilizer, lots of energy is needed either in the form of petroleum industry or maybe coal industry. So, these fossil fuels are limited, they do not be existed maybe in 50 years or 100 years. So, we have to always promote this type of nitrogenous fertilizers plants such as the legumes in our cropping system. Why pulses? Pulses are rich source of nutrients. If you see these as the different type of pulses, why the chickpea has a 21% protein, you go for the cowpea, it is 29% protein. If you also, this is comparable along with our non-veg option like fish and eggs, and these most of the proteins are very easily digestible. That is why there may be some problem if person who are consuming a high amount of mutton or chicken in a particular day, there is some digestive issues, but every day we are taking dal in our diet and we do not think any digestive problem. It is very much part of our balanced diet. So, there are different type of pulses we are growing in our cropping system, maybe chickpea, pigeon pea, green gram, black gram, cowpea, lentil, horse gram, pea, rajma, moth bean, lathyrus and several types. They are apart from the giving their protein, they are also important source of carbohydrate and they are also giving some much of fat. So, this is very much necessary in our balanced diet. That not only they have some important the protein, carbohydrate and fat, there are also mineral is needed for our body. There are different type of needs of minerals, maybe calcium, phosphorus, iron. Nowadays the iron anemia is very common, especially in the pregnant mother or the breastfeeding mother. So, these pulses are also source a very good of this type of irons, and if you see the different type of ppm, magnesium, zinc and also the folic acid. Sometimes doctor is also promoting give to breastfeeding mother to the folic acid capsule. So, these pulses are very good source, especially chickpea, mung bean, pea and lentil. So, all these legumes and pulses, they have a very good role for the balanced diet and they are very much included in our Indian traditional food system. Every household we are using pulse either in the lunch or in the dinner. Now, I am coming to the biological nitrogen fixation. What is called biologically nitrogen fixation? It means we are fixing the nitrogen, but not in the factory, not with the help of very high energy input, but we are fixing the nitrogen in soil with the help of living organisms biologically. If we know more than 80% of the atmosphere gas is the nitrogen. So, oxygen is less, but nitrogen is high, but we cannot use that nitrogen easily and put in the soil. It is not like that we take the gas from the atmosphere and put in the soil. There is some process mechanism that is called biological nitrogen fixation. Some plants like these legumes or pulses, they have the capacity to form root nodules with the help of rhizobium bacteria. They only can fix nitrogen. There are different from the pulse, there are some also other microorganisms will I also discuss later who can fix nitrogen symbiotically. So, biological nitrogen is fixes, it change from nitrogen to ammonia. In the atmosphere it is present in the form of nitrogen, while when the biological process it is reduced and it change the form of the ammonia, and this is mediated in nature only by the bacteria. And however, there are different type of nitrogen fixation capacity. Some plant may be 25 kilo per hectare per year, some may be 100, 30, but average on an average basis about 25 to 75 kilo nitrogen per hectare per year we can promote. 75 kilo nitrogen, it means more than 170 kilo of urea. So, that much of urea we can replace by growing a good quality of legume crop in our cropping system. This is the industrial process. This is a very famous process, Haber and Bosch process. They also got the Nobel Prize for discovering this process. And by this process in the industry, we are used to produce also urea and other fertilizer. So, nitrogen one atom along with 3 atom of hydrogen is produced 2 atom of ammonia, but this is not a very easy process. We need lot of temperature in the more than 450 degree centigrade and 500 atmospheric pressure. But if we see human industrial production amount to 80 into 10 to the power 9 kilo of ammonia ureally. This is our total production, maybe for different use, maybe for fertilizer, it is 80 to 10 to the power 9. All over the world this much nitrogen we are producing by this process. But if we see what is our nature is doing, nature is doing much higher amount of nitrogen fixation in its jungles, in the agricultural lands, in the ocean, and the total amount of nitrogen fixation in nature in our planet is 170 into 10 to the power 9 kg. That is very much higher as compared to the 80 into 10 to the power 90 kilo. So, nature provides for everybody's need, but not for everybody's greed. So, nature has given amount of nitrogen fixation. So, biological nitrogen fixation is the conversion of atmospheric nitrogen and hydrogen to the ammonia. By looking it is very much simple, 1 nitrogen and 3 hydrogen is making 2 atom of ammonia. But this above reaction also the simply and 78% nitrogen is present in the atmosphere, but the process is not so easy, because this nitrogen gas they have a triple bond, 2 nitrogen atom joined together by a triple bond, and this bond is very strong bond. This bond is very not easy to break and to make this nitrogen to ammonia. Only there, and if you know, for nitrogenase enzyme, for every molecule of nitrogen reduction there is a need of energy of 16 moles of ATP. So, huge amount of energy is needed, and only is capable of some plants with the help of some bacteria in their association, they can break this triple bond of nitrogen and reduce to the ammonia so that plant can use. So, biological nitrogen fixation, if we want to divide it, there are different type of nitrogen fixation. One is free living bacteria. There are some bacteria which lives freely in the nature. So, they do not need any association with any plants or other part of the living organisms. They are cyanobacteria and azotobacter. That is why azotobacter also we are applying in our organic farming. They are very much recommended to use in rice and other system, so that there should be some nitrogen fixation in the soil. There is some is associative. Associative mean when one plant or one microorganisms can perform only in the association with the others. Just like the rhizosphere, we have the azospirillum, we have cyanobacteria, and this is particularly our important, I want you to know, this is the nip nodule. So, if we see this is associative, and third part is the symbiotic, our mainly focus on the legume and rhizobium. Why we are called symbiotic? Symbiosis means when two organisms are growing together and helping each other. In the plant roots, this bacteria is living. The name of the bacteria is the rhizobium. So, plants giving food to the bacteria, and what the bacteria is doing? Bacteria is fixing the nitrogen from the atmosphere in the root nodules, and they supply to the soil as well as the plant. So, plant giving food to the bacteria and bacteria giving nitrogen to the plants. So, they are growing in the symbiosis. So, now I am copying, because most of our legume are rhizobium, they are nodule eating. So, rhizobium has a very potential role in organic farming. Not only we should promote the growth of legumes in our cropping system and our organic farming, but we should also use of the rhizobium. So, nowadays rhizobium can be cultured in the labs, and this rhizobium we should apply when we are sowing the legume seeds. They can be mixed with this seed at the time, initial time, at the help with Jaggari solution and others, and that will tremendously enhance their population after their establishment, and they can enhance the nitrogen fixation in the soil. This it is gram negative bacteria, it is microaerobic. It need certain type of oxygen. So, there is too much flood or too much water stagnation, productivity or the nitrogen fixation capacity of the rhizobium will decrease. Similarly, all the rhizobium species is not same for all crop. Suppose some rhizobium is associated with chickpea, that rhizobium species probably not occur nodules and nitrogen fixation in case of pea. In case of alfalfa, it is Rhizobium meliloti, while in case of clover, it is Rhizobium trifoli. Similarly, in case of pea and lathyrus, Rhizobium leguminosarum, while in case of peanut, it is Bradyrhizobium. So, there are different type of bacterial species of rhizobium which invade a certain particular time. So, not all the rhizobium are same for single plant. So, whenever we are applying some rhizobium for a particular crop and culturing in our lab, we have to be specific for which crop we should use which type of rhizobium, otherwise you will not get that desired result. So, what is the contribution of the rhizobium in the nitrogen fixation? These generally vary crop to crop, species to species, location to location, soil organic carbon content, amount of the nitrogen given, and whether it is drought condition or flooded condition or optimum soil moisture condition. So, whatever the average we have worked out and estimated over the world, a soybean can produce in case of 60 to 98 kilo per hectare, while you can see alfalfa or clover up to 200 kilo nitrogen they can fix, that is more than 450 kilo of urea. So, the nature and these plants has an enormous capacity to nitrogen fixation with the soil, maybe it ground at 50 to 92 kilo, while in case of Bengal gram is 85 to 110 kilo. So, by this slide we can want to know how much of nitrogen fixation per hectare per year basis by growing these crops in our field. So, we have to always promote this type of legume cultivation in organic farming, either in the intercropping or mixed cropping or as a cropping sequence. If we also show the contribution of the biological nitrogen fixation, and if we know average percentage of nitrogen from atmosphere, if we see, if we go to the chickpea, they average they are getting about 70 kilo of the nitrogen, and what is the derived as 41% of the nitrogen fixation. So, if we see this plant, most of their nitrogen they are getting by their nitrogen fixation. If you grow in case of lupins, 75% of their total nitrogen demand they can take from the biological nitrogen fixation from the atmosphere. So, only 25% nitrogen we have to apply either through the fertilizer or the manure. As majority more than 2/3 or 3/4 the plant or this crop is getting his own nitrogen demand for the biological nitrogen fixation. So, automatically our total amount of organic manure addition dose is reduced and cost will be less. If the cost will be less, so our profit will be maximized, apart from also the building the soil fertility. The biological nitrogen whenever we are getting, whatever the nitrogen fixation, all of the nitrogen is not directly giving into the soil. Certain parts of the nitrogen fixation is used by the plant, certain parts is also released in the soil. Suppose in case of cowpea, if we 53 to 85 kilo is the nitrogen fixation, about 50 kilo is released in the soil. So, these released in the soil they also grow different type of processes. Some may be lost in the different biochemical processes and some may be available for the growing of the next crop. Maybe we are growing some cereal crops in the next. So, our fertilizer recommendation will also be reduced, especially for nitrogen of the cereal when we are growing in succession with the legumes. Similarly, there are different types of data is available and also for the field pea, urd bean and other things. Now, we are quoting the symbiotic nitrogen fixation. Here I will go little bit what is the process of the nitrogen fixation. How? Suppose first when you grow a plant and a rhizobium is there associated in the soil, first the formation of a nodule has occurred. This nodule is very small structure, it is maybe very minute, roundish to oval in structure. After that, within this cell rhizobium occur, multiplication occur, plants supplied all the necessary nutrients and energy for the bacteria, and within a week after the infection small nodules are visible with your naked eye. When nodules are young and not yet fixing nitrogen, they are usually white or grey inside, but as the nodules grow in size, they grow bigger, they turn pink or reddish in color, indicating that the nitrogen fixation has started. Then why is the color of this red or pink in the rhizobium? Because there is a compound called leg hemoglobin. This is just like our hemoglobin in the blood, in the plant nodules, this hemoglobin is just leg hemoglobin is produced, and that is why the color is pink or reddish, and that control oxygen flow to the bacteria. I have already told these rhizobium bacteria which are growing in the soil, which help in the nitrogen fixation, they are microaerobic. So, if there is no oxygen, they cannot perform well. If there is flooding for 7 or 8 days, the nitrogen fixation capacity will be decreased. So, this leg hemoglobin help a very prominent role for supply of oxygen to the growth of this nodule for needed for the rhizobium bacteria. So, bacteria encounter the root, they are chemotactically attacked towards the specific chemicals, that is probably maybe flavonoids, excluding from the root tissue, especially in response to the nitrogen limitation. So, when nitrogen is limited in a plant, when there is, this is the plant root and there is nitrogen is limited, it secretes some type of chemicals like flavanoids, and the rhizobium bacteria which is present nearby, they are being attracted to the roots, and after the attraction they form some nodules in some certain process. So, if you see, this is the picture how the nodule formation. If you see the roots of the legume, some growth factors they have created. For example, pea secretes homoserine and carbohydrate containing protein lectin over the surface. Then the rhizome is being attracted. The lectin interact with the carbohydrate receptor and bacteria enter root through the soft root hair. So, this is our cell wall, and when there is cell wall, we have seen this is the root hairs, this is the root hair nucleus, and this is when there is something rhizobium is coming here. After rhizobium is starting, there is a curved tip of the root hair. So, from here our nodulation will starts, and if you see, this is the structure of a just root cell wall, how we are growing, the how the rhizobium is attacking. So, there is pericular, endodermis, epidermis, cortical cell. After the cortex in the root nodules, the nodule is formation like that. So, initially there is a curved root hair, the nodule rhizobium will attack, there will be curve so that they can enter within the cell, and when they have entered within the cell, they have multiplied several times, millions. So, when their population is increased, they also make some type of cell around there, and they make all these nodule which you can easily visible in your naked plant. When you uproot some legume plants, maybe pea or chickpea or lentil, these nodules are available. So, if this is the plant root, and after certain time you will found this type of roundish or pinkish structure attached with the roots. So, this is the nodule which help the rhizobium and they are biologically nitrogen fixation. So, this is what is very good picture if you see in the just our, this is the root hair, where root hair is very much needed to taking all the nutrients, they are also absorb the soil moisture, and the bacteria is in their vicinity. So, all these are bacteria. After that bacteria, the rhizobium, the infection thread has been done, and they enter into the system. If you see, they enter into the system into the root cell wall, and after they have multiply, and when they multiply in to very much high amount, and they also make some specialized cell around them, they make the root nodules, and this is the structure of different whitish or pinkish different type of root nodules. So, there is a nodulation index. Suppose we want to know in our particular field situation where the crop is fixing good amount of nitrogen or less amount of nitrogen. Some nodules may be very much small, some nodules may be big in size. So, we have to give some point. If the small size is 1, medium 2, large is 3. Similarly, nodule color, I have already told it is the white color, though nitrogen fixation is very less. If the color is pinkish, then it is fixing good amount of nitrogen. Similarly, number, there may be one or few, there may be many. So, when we are just making, we have to we have to multiply these with the nodule size, with the nodule color, and with the nodule number. And if it is the nodule index is 12 to 18, that is highly efficient, nitrogen fixation is very good. If nodule index is 6 to 12, it is mediumly efficient. Fixation is not very bad or not very good if this nodule cell index by multiplying the nodule size, nodule color and nodule number. But if the nodule index is very less, it is less efficient. If we see in case of French bean, although it is a leguminous crop, but the nitrogen fixation capacity is very less. So, now in this slide, I will describe what are the different type of factors or materials which are directly or indirectly responsible for nitrogen fixation and what is their role. So, there are some basic requirements for nitrogen fixation. There are two enzymes very much needed, one is nitrogenase and one is hydrogenase. So, this enzyme secrete in the plant's root system and they facilitate with the help of the rhizobium for the nitrogen fixation. There is also need of protective mechanism is oxygen. I have already told these are microaerobic. They need air, but not in a very high quantity also. And there, if there is absolutely there is no air, then also there is a problem. There is also one compound, that is the iron rich compound, that is ferrodexin is needed, and constant supply of ATP, because I have already told previously, when the biological nitrogen fixation process, to fix nitrogen of one atom reduction of the nitrogen, there is a constant need of 16 moles of ATP. So, every time there is a lot of energy is needed. This is a energy consuming process, and there are some coenzymes and cofactors, and there are some different compound is needed: cobalt, molybdenum and carbon compound. So, if the soil organic carbon content is the high, so then there is a chance of more nitrogen fixation. Similarly, the cobalt and molybdenum, it is always sometime we are advocating to use some molybdenum along with more nitrogen fixation. This is the nitrogenase activity I have already told. This enzyme has a very tremendous role. This is the nitrogenase. This enzyme catalyzes the nitrogen fixation, but this enzyme is extremely sensitive to the oxygen. So, there is two part. One part of the nitrogenase is the molybdenum iron part. These are protein that bind the nitrogen, and second part is the smaller iron protein, that is only iron, there is no molybdenum, that acts as a electron donor to the protein 1. So, this nitrogenase enzyme done the following reaction, just like our Haber-Bosch process. In the same way, the nitrogenase carrying the following reaction: N2 plus 8 hydrogen molecules ultimately converts to 2 amount of ammonia and 1 hydrogen atom. So, similarly, by this process, electron transfer is accompanied by the hydrolysis of 2 ATP molecules, and therefore, the reaction occurred for the nitrogen fixation. The biochemistry, if we see pathway of the nitrogen fixation in root molecules, glucose 6 phosphate, this is a very much important as a source of energy. This glucose 6 phosphate as done as the electron donor. From where the glucose 6 phosphate is being produced? You know, in the plant body there is sucrose. This sucrose is synthesized in the leaf. This sucrose again change into glucose and fructose, and after that change into glucose 6 phosphate. So, it is converted to phosphoglyconic acid, and in the process they are also donates electron to the ferrodexin, and this ferrodexin I have already told has a very prominent role for the nitrogen fixation. So, in the mechanism of nitrogen action we have seen reduced Fe protein combines with the ATP molecules in the presence of magnesium. So, magnesium is also very much important for the nitrogen fixation in the soil. 2 subunit of the MOFE protein is activated and reduced, and it donates the electron to convert the nitrogen to ammonia. So, in the cyclic process we have happened, this is the molecule they are bonding with the nitrogen atom, and after that is different process, and ultimately they form ammonia, and the remaining whatever the molybdenum is again going back to its original condition, so that he again fix nitrogen for some other molecules. So, there are different management practices for enhancing the legume productivity and nitrogen fixation. In organic farming, when we are promoting the legume for nitrogen fixation, what we should do and what we should not do. So, one thing is choose the most appropriate legume of the soil type. Some legumes may be acidic lover, some legumes may be well adapted to the alkaline condition. So, we have to always very much in nature, otherwise our nitrogen fixation capacity we will not get into. Similarly, we have to give phosphorus is very much needed for nitrogen fixation. Though a soil which is deficient in phosphorus, our nitrogen fixation will be low. Sufficient level of iron, molybdenum, copper, potassium and zinc. So, these micronutrient also very much related, and organic farming, when we are applying a good quality of organic manures, they supply most of these organic nutrients, and this micronutrients is very much necessary. So, in organic farming the quantity of the nitrogen fixation is comparatively higher as compared to the inorganic fertilizer applied fields. So, nitrogen fixation, there is some nitrogen fixation inhibitor also. Soil nitrate inhibits the nitrogen nodulation and nitrogen fixation. So, if the soil nitrogen fertilizer we are giving enough amount, too much amount we are applying the urea or some DAP fertilizer. So, if the nitrogen concentration, nitrate concentration in the soil is very high, so in that condition plants saw there is too much nitrogen. When there is too much nitrogen and easily available, plant will not grow too much nodules. So, nitrogen fixation capacity of the plants is automatically reduced in the presence of sufficient amount of inorganic nitrogen. So, legumes, why are they important for the nitrogen fixation? They are most important source of the protein in the world. They are also act as a good natural fertilizer, and they are a different type 25 to 7 kilo is a smaller amount we can tell. This much nitrogen is definitely being fixed in the system which come to the soil health and also supply for a very good quality crop and very high yielding potential we are getting. So, we have also seen these slides, and if we see different type of classification of cropping system. One is crop rotation, matlab only we are not growing cereal. More probably this year we are go rice, wheat, probably next year we change with the some legumes. Intercropping, when we can grow 2 line of maize, 2 line of soybean, 2 line of maize, 2 line of groundnut. In the sugar cane we can also intercrop some legumes. So, these nitrogen they what they are fixed, they are not only giving the nitrogen to the soil by the legumes, some of their nitrogen fixed also getting by the subsequent crop, that is associated crop with the cereals. So, there may be less amount of nitrogen needed for the associated cereals when they are grow as intercropped with legumes. Similarly, we can also grow a sequential cropping after rice or after wheat or after any cereals or nutrient exhaustive crop like ginger and turmeric. We should promote this type of legume cultivation. There is a multi-story cropping when there may be 2 or 3 layers of cropping. In the above layer, in the taller plants you can grow some other leguminous trees, and in the lower side you can grow some cereals or other crops. So, this is the year round one chart how you can grow your crop rotation, what you should grow for year 1, if secondly year 2, and if you see this is year 2, year 3, year 4. So, if we follow this type of systems in your field, so definitely your soil fertility will be built up, soil quality will be maintained, and yield or the total system productivity or system will be enhanced significantly. The intercropping is, what is the intercropping? Intercropping is the growing of 2 crops together on the same land. But what is the difference between the mixed cropping? Suppose we are growing some plant here the cereal, again we are growing 2 lines of different crop, again we are growing 2 line of cereal, again we are growing different type of another crops. So, this is called intercropping. We grow different type of crops in the same land with some definite row arrangement. So, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 lines you go for one crop, and the again 1, 2 or 3 lines for the other crops. And we are always promoting not on the intercropping, cereal plus legume intercropping. There are different type of intercropping is there, row intercropping, strip intercropping, mixed intercropping and relay intercropping. And if you see, this is the chemical always we are happening in our nature. So, we should promote intercropping in our organic farming to the maximum extent possible where we cannot grow the legumes in cropping sequence. So, what is the advantage of crop rotation? It increase the crop yield profit, better quality of weeds, better also fertility of the soil. While in case of intercropping, you are also suppression of the weeds. Suppose in case of maize crop, there is too much weed is cropping. But if we grow some type of crops like cowpea or soybean, these leguminous have very luxurious growth. So, they not only fix the nitrogen from the atmosphere, they also help the cover the soil very immediately due to their fast growth. And when the cowpea they cover the soil surface, they will not allow to grow in the weeds. So, weed population has been decreased. So, this is some indirect role of the legumes apart from building the soil fertility. And they are also pest and disease attack. Sometimes they have some repellent activities of there that is not preferred by the insect, but if you are growing only one crop, then definitely insect and pest disease load will be higher. Then also we have grown the multi-story cropping. You can see this is the very big trees we are producing in the above, and the lower side we can get some upper part of crop. This is called multi-story, just like our multi-storied building. So, in this condition, in the same land we can grow 2 or 3 type of crops. And what is the other things advantage? We should always promote the crops which are growing in the lower side, they should be shade tolerant. If they need too much light, their growth will be affected. Similarly, hedgerow or alley cropping, you see we are growing some type of crop, but we are also growing nearby also plant. You may be different type of apple trees, you may be some orchards, you may be some nitrogen fixation trees, but we are always promote to grow some leguminous crop in this hedgerow, so that you can use their leaves or their twigs. There you can simply chop them, decompose them and use in your soil for your soil fertility restoration. So, nitrogen always return. So, whenever the nitrogen we have fixes by the soil, now the question is what is fate of that nitrogen? It is not necessarily if you plant 100 kilo nitrogen fixed in the soil, that 100 kilo will be easily available to the next crop growing in the sequence. So, one process is how the decomposition. whatever the legume root tissue is decomposed, that is 40 to 66% of the biological nitrogen fixation. Second, all these type of legumes, they also secrete sometimes of root exudants, some type of chemicals, and these are very low molecular weight amino acid, organic acids there, and also there is some mycorrhizae is available. So these are also different type of microorganisms which are associated with the plant, and they help in transfer of this nitrogen from the initial vicinity of the root fixation nitrogen type to some associated crops. So this is the transfer. Previously I have told about how the nitrogen is being fixed in that soil. We have detailedly discussed in which way we should grow a legume and cereal intercropping, how we can maximize the nitrogen fixation. Now we can nitrogen transfer. So whenever the transfer of nitrogen of a donor plant to the receiver plant without going mineralization, so that's I have already told. So when we are growing, suppose this is a maize crop and here we are growing some type of legumes. In both sides suppose we are growing. So there will be some nitrogen we are fixed in this root, it will go into the soil, but some part will also come to the maize crop. This is called nitrogen transfer to the associated crops, and this is called also sparing effect of nitrogen. So there is a different type of process and different types of process how the leguminate will be there, this leguminate will be decomposed, and there will be some mechanism with the mycorrhizae and others, so that our this maize product also gets some amount of nitrogen which are fixed by their associated crops, and so that you can reduce to 10 to 20% of the nitrogen demand of these crops when you are growing cereal and legume intercropping together. So there is also different type of calculation we have done. Suppose in a soil where there is legume and crop sequences there, if you see previously we grow legume, after that we have grown some sequence. The nitrogen fixation capacity is 120 kilo and there is soil mineral 80 kilo, but apart from 200 kilo it will not really available. There is some gaseous losses, there is this type of nitrogen is harvested by the plant. So how much you are available? If you show in case of different process, about 98 kilo nitrogen is available for the crop growing after the legume. Suppose previously we have grown some pea and after that we are growing maize. But in the other condition you see when there is no legume, only cereal. Similarly in case of our gaseous loss will be also more as compared to our in just whenever there is no legumes. And also see there is the soil mineral nitrogen what, when we have calculated this graph we have see only 59 kilo nitrogen is available. So while in case of cereal plus cropping sequence that is 98 kilo, in case of cereal cropping system only 59 kilo. So this please clearly show what is the importance of the legumes in a cropping sequence and how we can maximize our different type of resources under organic farming so that we can get a better quality yield. So what is the different type of factor nitrogen transfer? There may be mild deficit, there may be nitrogen content, there may be temperature, and there may be root contact and architecture. So all these factors depend how much nutrient you can transfer and how much distance your intercropping has grown over your system. So legume, non-legume, plant density, how many population you have the legume crop and how many lines you have grown for the your associated crop. So there should be always some balance in cereal plus legume intercropping. So how much area we should given for particular crop in case of in compared to the sole cropping. So plant growth stage is also that if you see at early growth stage it is more liable, while in case of nitrogen transfer to the later stage is low. And root herbivory, the amount of nitrogen transfer from legume to neighboring legume varies with the density of the roots. So if the density of root of the cereal is very less, it cannot absorb the nutrient from the associated legumes. If the root density is very minute and there are lots of roots around the legumes, so it can take more amount of nitrogen from the associated legumes. And also it is the genetic variability. Some plant can absorb more nutrient nitrogen, some plant can more. This is always depend on the genetic variability within the plant present. So nitrogen transfer to the intercrop cereal or grasses, what is the different type of amount? There are some legume species, trifolium, you see about 31 to 41% nitrogen is transferred to the associated crop. So this is a very good amount. If 31 to 40% of the nitrogen is transferred to the associated crops, so in that condition the 31 to 44% nitrogen demand of these associated cereals or grasses we can reduce. So there is a need of less amount of organic manure application to these cereal crops. While in case of we are go for organic only these cereal crops, probably we have to apply more amount of organic manure to get the same nutrient levels. So the dream always there is a dream. We think in case of our cereal, in nitrogen fixation is occurred in the legumes, in the jungles, ocean. We are always promoting the growth of these nitrogen fixing plants, that is the legumes in our cropping system. So what is the different type of things? There is I have already told there is some nitrogenous enzyme available. There is also some gene is available, that is NIP gene. So scientists are over the years, they are thinking this NIP gene is very much responsible for the nitrogen fixation in the legumes. If we can transfer this NIP gene from our legume counterpart through the cereal, either maybe some molecular or biotechnological approach or genetically engineering approach, or maybe some breeding aspect. So if the cereal root and the cereal crop is this NIP gene, if they can produce also root nodules along with the help of rhizobium bacteria, then probably our nitrogen demand of the cereal crop will be reduced drastically, because most of the area in the world is covered only the cereal crops, especially rice, wheat and maize. And if there is in some possibility in the near future, so that these plants can grow nitrogen, so that they can fix nitrogen in the soil, so our nitrogen fixation ability will be, cereal will be increased, our total load of the nutrient demand, so that our nitrogen fertilizer preparation in the industry also will be reduced. And in case of cereal crop, this rice, wheat, maize, these are generally exhaustive type of crop, if they can fix nitrogen in their own root, so our total organic manure and the compost and vermicompost, whatever we are applying, the dose should be reduced. We have done different type of cropping rotation on a maize dry matter yield, and if we see in a experiment in different type of yield, if you see here we are growing only maize, this is only maize, only cereal. If you see the dry matter yield is reduced, but whenever we are incorporating with some cowpea, maybe soybean or velvet bean, our yield is enhanced. It is clearly seen. So legume when incorporation in the cropping sequence not only increase the soil fertility, but it also enhance the yield of the next crop, cereal crop, when we are growing in sequence. Similarly, in the next year also we are getting same type of result when we are growing a different type of legumes in succession after maize as compared to the maize system, our dry matter as well as the yield is enhancing. So there are different type of green manure. We are also previously in our class what is green manure crop and what is green leaf manure, and always we are preferring these leguminous crops for our green manure, so that maximum nitrogen fixation occur within the soil, and these residue, plant residue is again going back to the soil. So nitrogen supplementation will be there and nitrogen fixation will in the soil will be there. There are different type of crops which they are suitable for green manuring. There is dhancha, this is sanhem, this is the cowpea, and this is the pea, this is barshim and the lucerne. So if we see how type of crop we can grow in our cropping system, in case of green manure, we have to always think green manure are crops, suppose we are growing rice or maize in the month of May, June, July, but there are some time left in our field, February, March, April, and if there is some water availability either in the form of rainfall, otherwise in the form of if we are giving when the irrigation is there, we should promote this type of crops. So we grow in this field this type of crops like dhancha, sanhem, cowpea, and when they attain a stage of 40 to 50 days, so that their stem is not very high, in that condition we are simply chop it out, we cutting by some knives or maybe some machines or by the tractors, and we are mixing this biomass within the soil. So this whatever the nitrogen fixation has done in the soil, so soil fertility is enhanced, and whatever the different type of nutrient these plants they have taken, because they are very deep root system, so they take the nutrients from the deeper soil layer, and they are again mixing this when after their decomposition they are again giving back these nutrients to the surface layer, so that when we are growing the next crop, maybe rice, maize, wheat or whatever may be, they get enough nutrients from the soil. So the soil quality is improved, because due to the addition of organic manure, physical, chemical and biological structure of the enhanced, soil fertility is also enhanced, and the next crop green yield with a better quality. So why legumes are preferred, I have already told. They have the ability to fix nitrogen in the soil. They are very readily decomposing crop. Why readily decomposing? I have already just started in my earlier class. If you use maize or some rye or barley residue, the C is to N ratio is very high. When the CN ratio is very high, it takes more time to decompose. However, in case of all these legumes, as the nitrogen content is high, the C is to N ratio is less. When C is to N ratio is less, so definitely it will decompose faster, and the decomposition is faster, matlab plants will get immediately release whenever they get nutrient when growing in the succession. So other criteria, their plants are softer soil, they should be fast growing, definitely leguminous in nature, and they have very less pest and disease attack, more biomass, decomposing rapidly, which I have already covered, and should have fibrous root systems. The time of green manuring, it is mostly practiced in the time of Kharif season, and high temperature help in the rapid decomposition. When the temperature is little bit less, so in that condition the decomposition process also is slower, but generally 6 weeks time is needed when we complete the decomposition. So time of green manure is very much important, because in case of Rabi season, if we grow some green manure crops, the temperature is low, so the decomposition process will be slow. Similarly, generally when you grow green manure crop, it only enhances the soil fertility and also the soil structure. It direct not giving any benefit to the farmer, because all the leaves are cutting and chopping within the soil. So a farmers may not be interested to grow in a crop season when you have to apply 5 or 6 irrigation. So in this condition, we are always try to provoke the or motivate the farmer to grow this type of green manure crops in the time when actually there is no other crops is existing, there is no need of irrigation, and there is no need of applying too much fertilizer or other things. Then only farmer will motivate to grow this type of crops. Otherwise, by expensing the yield of some very important crop, no one will be eligible or no one will be interested to grow these green manure crops only due to the soil fertility enhancement for particularly very poor farmers of India. And types of green manuring in situ and green leaf manure. Green leaf manure in situ, when we are growing this type of green manure crops in the same field, and after growing 40-50 days we are mixing within the soil. While in case of green leaf manure, we are not growing these plants in our field. There may be some barns near your field, there may be some abandoned area, there may be some degraded area, or there may be nearby forest area where lots of leguminous tree species is already there. We have to simply go there, cutting or chopping the leaves, and we have to take in our field and mixing with the soil, so that after decomposition our soil fertility and soil physical and biological structure will be enhanced. There are different type of nutrient content we are getting green manure crops, and we are very amazed to see there are some crops like Sanhem, that is Crotalaria juncea, and Dhancha. Dhancha is the most widely used crop for green manuring. This is Sesbania echolita, and if you see the nitrogen content is 3.5%, P2O5 that is 0.6, and also the potassium content is 1.2. While Sesbania, the speciosa species, the potassium content is very high, 2.21. So we have to always select this type of crops. Some crops may not be suitable for acidic soil, some green manure crop may not be acidic for alkaline soil, and also there is a which type of temperature in the location. So this agro-climatic condition we have to think whenever we are introducing some green manure crop in our field. If you see the nutrient green leaf manure, where we are taking the from the jungles or nearby abandoned area or the barn, there is different species like Gliricidia sepium, Pongamia glabra, Azadiracta indica, and Dolonyx regia, and they also nutrient content varies from 2 to 3.3%, phosphorus 0.28 to 0.46%, and if you see potassium also very high, and particularly Gliricidia, that is very much needed where in the soil where potassium available, potassium is low. So we have to always test our soil, whatever the nutrient status, and if the nitrogen is deficient, you should grow certain other type of green leaf manure. If the phosphorus deficient, you maybe grow from some other, or there is a limitation of the potassium availability, you should grow the crops like Gliricidia. So this is always choice by the farmers and all the any entrepreneurs. Whenever you go for organic farming, the green manure is promoted, and you have to select a suitable crop species. If we do different type of experiment we have done on the green manuring crops on the girth, height, and yield of sugarcane, and that is one experiment on Kabiraj et al. 2017. If we see the yield of the sugarcane in control, where we have not done any green manuring, is only 59 ton per hectare, while in case of you see in case of Sanhem, wherever we are giving, the yield is 91.87 ton per hectare. So if you simply minus 91.87 from then 59.11, so we can get about 22.76 kilo that is ton yield enhancement. So, by only growing a 2 months crops in the field when there is no other crops with the rainfall and very limited input, the sugarcane yield is enhanced by 22 ton per hectare. So, a farmers will get very much profit. Apart from his soil is also being fertile and quality for growing of the next year. We have also done different type of experiment on the soil organic carbon status on the different cropping system. If you see, the organic carbon content is only 5.8, where we are only rice wheat system. There is no legume, only 5.8 kilo. But in the same system, when we incorporate green gram, the soil organic carbon is enhanced up to 6.8%. Similarly, when we also incorporate our green gram in the rice mustard system, our organic carbon content is 6.5. So, whenever we are growing in this type of leguminous crops, maybe green gram, maybe pea and other crops, and in the place of existing cereal cropping system, or soil organic carbon is enhanced. If the soil organic carbon is enhanced, all the soil physical, chemical and biological characteristics will be improved, and ultimately that will enhance to enhance growth and productivity of the crops. It also not only promotes the nitrogen, mostly I have taken nitrogen, but it also helps the mobilization of the other nutrients. Suppose the phosphorus. The deep root system of the legumes is a biological plow, I have already told. They take from the nutrient from the very lower deeper layer, and after they are uprooting and mixing in the soil of the residue, they again giving back to the nutrient in the surface layer. Similarly, the organic acid secretion. There are some leguminous root where the organic acid is secretion from their field, and if we see, this organic acid is very much helpful. They are eliminating the phosphorus, and they also help the phosphorus mobilization. So, a crop when we are growing in succession, their yield will be better and system will be good. There are different type of organic acids. Suppose like pigeon pea is citric acid, while the chickpea is organic citric acid, lupin also citric acid, soybean both citric and malic acid. So, they have this type of fraction. Somewhere is this is the iron phosphorus complex, someone is taking the calcium phosphorus complex. So, by this process legumes are also helping the mobilization of the phosphorus, and this also they are also the energy saving, they are also reducing the greenhouse gas emission, and nitrogen fertilizer efficiency are increasing. So, fertilizer industry consume only 1.2% of the total energy, and pulses are more environment friendly as compared to our nitrogen which are produced in the synthetic fertilizers like urea. So, we should always this type of promote crop, this type of growth. We have to always promote this type of cultivation in our field. So, our organic farming always aim for growing of legumes. You can grow as a mixed crop, you can grow as a intercrop. Here you see we have how beautifully we are growing maize along with the soybean. So, this soybean not only enhancing the soil fertility for the subsequent crop, they also give some nitrogen to the associated maize. So, legume always should be incorporated, it should be part of our organic farming system, and is maybe as a intercropping, maybe green manure crop, maybe green leaf manure, maybe mixed cropping, or you can grow legume as a crop sequence. Thank you.